So today I'm going to be solving this Rubik's Cube with my eyes closed. Now, the method I'm going to be using to solve this with my eyes closed is not a typical blindfolded method. It's completely inefficient. It took me about 2 hours in school today to memorize this cube and memorize everything I needed to solve it. However, it is pretty cool that it works at all, and I think it has potential to be a very good blindfolded method if you're quick to think. I'm not, so I don't think it will be that helpful for me, but whatever. So I'm going to go ahead, put this cube down, take this pillowcase, wrap it around my head, attempt to tie a knot. I'm going to make sure I know how this cube is oriented on my desk. And I'm going to solve it. Oh God. That was quite a bad knot. Gonna make an attempt number 2 to attach the pillowcase to my head. Okay, how can I do this? Okay, there we go. Gotta make sure my nose isn't too crushed. There's no way I can see anything. I'm assuming that this is the blue in front, yellow on top, because that's how I put the cube down. So my solution is to essentially solve the cube the way I would solve it if I was looking at it. So I solved the EOLine there. I'm not sure how I should hold the cube. Solve the EOLine, which means these two edges should be solved. And now I should also have the cross solved. This is something I don't normally do during a solve, but I'm doing it during this blindfolded solve to make my life easier. Now I set up a specific order in which I always solve these blocks so that my method will make it easier to memorize the cube. So I'm going to go ahead and solve the front right F2L block. So now this block should be solved. And now I'm going to solve the next one. Alright, now this block should be solved. So there should be a large solved block there. Now, this is where it starts to become tricky. This block should be solved. And there's one last block. And now all the blocks should be solved. Now I'm going to perform OLL. In the planning stage, OLL and PLL were by far the hardest. And I'll explain to you why after I'm done solving. Oh God. OLL should now be complete. Now I believe, if I've done everything correctly, that this is going to be a T-Perm. And now I believe that it is solved. It is solved. However, I just discovered that I was holding the cube over here while I was solving it, so hopefully you could see all of my steps, because if not, that would be a shame. But anyway, now I'll talk a little bit about how my solution method worked. Well, essentially what I do is, upon inspection, whenever I'm solving a cube, I will see how to solve the EOLine fairly quickly. So that's the first step of this process. And I essentially just memorize which way I use to solve the EOLine, so that way I know that I do the same thing every time. Because there's so many ways to solve the EOLine, usually. So once I memorize this EOLine, and the way specifically I do it, I memorize, after I've done that specific EOLine, I figure out, I track my two other cross pieces and see where they're going to be. And this is all during the planning stage of my solve. And I keep track of where those are going to be after I'm done. And I record the moves I'm going to use to put those into the cross. And then after that, so far I have all the moves I've done for the EOLine and all the moves I've done for the cross. And then I go back, put my finger on the cube when I'm doing my planning stage, move the first corner for the block around as I do the moves in my head. I move my finger around on the cube and see where the corner is going to end up, and I see where the edge is going to end up. And I memorize those two positions. And then I do the F2L magic that I would do to place that block, which I can do pretty consistently. and I will do it the same way every time pretty much. So I write down the moves I would do for that first block, and then I track the second block pieces through all of those moves and see what happens. So by the time I get to the last layer, I have about 60 moves, and I have to track 4 corners and 4 edges to do the last layer. So it's ridiculously tedious. However, if you're tracking one piece at a time, it's not too bad because a lot of face turns don't affect a given piece. So I found that out of my usually like 40 or so moves, I tried this once and failed before this. My 40 or 50 so moves, I usually will have about 20 of those turns actually affecting the piece that I'm interested in or less. So it'll be usually less than half. And so that's pretty reassuring. It makes tracking possible. I'm not sure if I could do it in 3 seconds of inspection or 10 minutes of inspection, but it took me at school today like 2 class blocks with a scrambled cube just writing down all these tracking. But it is a possible way to solve it without touching a cube and moving it around if you can do tracking in your head really fast and keep track of everything that's done. So to memorize the cube, all I need to do is memorize which EOLine I use. Then I have to memorize the position of the corner and the orientation of the first corner, and the position of the edge and the orientation of the first edge, then the position of the next corner and the orientation of the next corner, etc. And then I have to memorize which OLL I'm going to use, which I have to figure out during my planning stage, and I have to memorize which PLL I'm going to use and how I'm going to use it. So that's basically a run-through of my blindfold solving method. It's not very good, but it worked for me this one time, and I'm never doing a blindfolded solve again. So goodbye.